Before I explain how to draw something larger than our original, it's important to understand the difference between two words very commonly confused, mixed up, but which do actually have different meanings. And both these words are connected with changing the size of something in different ways. So it's important we know the difference. And these are the words scale and proportion. Now, when I want to draw something either the same size as what my reference is, or when I want to draw it larger or smaller, I'm talking about scale. The size will change, but the shape stays the same. The ratio of height to width stays the same. If my height here is, say, 10 centimeters, and my width is, say, to keep it simple, 20 centimeters, and I want to double the scale, then I will have my height as 20 centimeters and my width as 40 centimeters. I'm multiplying the height and the width by the same number, by 2. However, if I want to make the height 3 times the original, but my width only, say, twice my original, I've now changed the shape. I've changed the way it looks. I've changed the proportions. My drawing will look like a narrower, thinner version of the original reference. Or I could change the proportions the other way. I could keep the height the same, say 10 centimeters, but I could change the width. I could double it and make it, say, 40 centimeters. Now I've changed the proportions so that I have a long, narrow, squat-looking building compared to my reference. In this video, we're talking about changing the scale. We want what we draw to look the same, but larger or smaller. So I want to draw this firstly the same size. I keep the scale the same. I want the same ratio of height to width in my drawing that I have here. This is the simplest way when we're learning to draw things with an accurate scale. So it's helpful to print off your reference, if possible, the size you want to draw. And because I'm drawing directly in ink, there's no erasing, so I have to work out a way of drawing this that keeps the scale consistent and doesn't put marks that I can't have there at the end. I always find the simplest geometric shape. And in this case, I'm looking at this box here, and this width and this height. But I'm going to start with this column on the left. So there's the top and bottom. So now I need to extend it out. And now I look at this box here, the space between the two columns, as an object, and I want to draw it so that the height and the width is the same. So I'm looking at this line as being the same, and I think about there, maybe there. So now I put this down, and I can do another one here. One way now of checking the accuracy of these proportions is to add the details that's inside this shape and to see if it fits and looks the same way. Now, this bottom of the sill here is, in my mind, about halfway down. So the halfway point is maybe there. So there's that. And now this is about the same as that, and this is about the same as that. Now, one way we can check whether our scale is correct, our 1-to-1 same size scale is correct at this stage, we just need a scrap of paper, and we can compare the width of the section we've drawn. We want it to be the same, and that's not too bad. And we can now check the height. And we're just a little bit longer on our height. Now I want to extend out with the same on both sides. So I want this space to be the same as this space. So I want from there to there does that look? Look about the same? I think so. And now the other one. Now looking at this now, this one looks a bit wide and this one looks a little bit wide, but not as much as this one. But let's just check using that same method. So from here to here, and actually it's not too bad. And we know our height from there to there is just a bit more. I've actually taken it down a bit more there. All right. And then on top now, we have this lintel, which is about the same as those. So this is how I keep my proportions correct, consistent when I'm drawing the same scale. What if I want to now draw this larger? Instead of a 1:1 scale, what if I want to have a 1:2 scale? I want my drawing to be double the size. Well, first, I'll just quickly finish this one. Understanding this process in drawing the same scale, the same size, is quite crucial to now be able to use it and to change the scale, to increase or decrease the scale, make our drawing larger or smaller than the reference. And I'll show you this example doing both things. But first, we'll just finish this. Now we want to draw this double the size, but we need to keep the proportions the same. So let's start with this column. So we need to double the size of the column. Firstly, I draw it. Now I wouldn't actually draw this, but I draw it the same size because now I want to double it. But I don't just double the height, I double the width. But now I do the same thing. I move out top and bottom, and now I think about positioning this window, and I think of it's now going to be this width in about there, and the same up here, this width at the top, and I want to get this proportion. So I want these columns to be twice the width of these columns and twice the length. And again now, this line is halfway down. And if you're finding this interesting or even helpful, please hit the like button for me right now while you're just watching me draw this bit. We can check the same way, except I want this to go down twice. So I have there and I have there. So I'm a little bit more than twice. So I want my width to be a little bit more than twice the width that we have here. So there's the width. And it's a little bit more. So probably proportionately, it's the same ratio. I'm slightly more than double size. I do the same thing. I go outwards and I'm looking at keeping this distance the same as this one. This distance, I think that's sort of looking okay. And I do the same on the other side. And I am about to move the entire drawing back into camera view. Sorry about that. So now again, we can use our method to see, have we got the proportions correct? Now I can compare from here to here, and I want the width to be double this. There to there, and well, that's probably as good as I would hope. And let's try now the height from here to here. So from there to there, and from there to there. So that's pretty close. So now I can add the same detail if I want. I hope you can see how if we work really hard at keeping the proportions correct of the very first things that we draw, it becomes easier as we move out to keep the scale consistent, the height to width ratio, because now I start to measure off the things I've already done. And if you have a particular problem with scale, with making drawings larger or smaller than the reference, or with keeping them in proportion, with maintaining the same overall shape, whatever size you draw the objects that are in your reference, then please, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Or if you found another way of ensuring more accurate proportions when you change scale, then please let us know. This is such a problem area when we draw. Every bit of help in a solution would be appreciated. So please let us know in the comments any particular problems you have or any other solutions that you may have found. But for now, we'll just keep adding this detail in quickly. It might help if I move it into camera range. Again, apologies. But you can see here where this is where I was making this distance the same as this one, which I'd drawn first, and this one also the same as this one on the other side. I can use all of this shape as my reference instead of just focusing on this as, if you like, my measuring reference point. I can use all of this as I move outwards with the rest of the building. And if you've been paying so much attention that you haven't managed to hit the like button yet, well, this is a great time, I reckon, to do it. This is how we can change the scale of something that we're drawing from a reference. We keep the proportions, the height to width ratio the same. In this case, we double them both. We choose a simple starting point where it's easier to eyeball the proportions. And then we move out. I would suggest that you use this checking method after you've eyeballed it. Of course, you can do this as part of your process to plot where the various elements are going to go. But if we do, we can easily become dependent on that and not develop the skills of observation and estimation, which are so useful and so satisfying to have when we draw. I know that keeping things in proportion is a big issue, but we can keep things in proportion and draw things at the same scale as our reference, or we can keep things in proportion and draw them at a larger scale. And of course, I can do the same thing, but at a smaller scale. I can draw this first column half the height and the width. And so I'm using exactly the same process that I used in the earlier two drawings. It's exactly the same thinking, whether I go twice the size or half the size or a third as large again. Now, how does this measure up? If I want half, that would be about there. And that looks okay. And if I want half the width, that would be about there. And I've made this a little bit smaller in the width, so it could just be a couple of line widths wider. But once we understand how scale works, it's a great tool for drawing larger, same size, or smaller than our reference. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope this has not just made the difference between scale and proportion clear, but also help giving you some strategies, some processes, some ways of thinking to not just keep the proportions consistent, but to be able to choose the scale with which we draw in relation to the reference. And of course, the more we understand and master controlling the scale with which we draw something, the less chance that what we draw is going to frustratingly run off the page in either direction. I'll post this photo on my channel community page if you'd like to use it to explore scale. But hey, in the end, whatever you use, whatever you draw, whatever scale it is, however the proportions turn out, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.